but you know, even though many of these other companies in other countries have removed them from their products, like in Europe, they continue to use the same products in the U.S. because the FDA and basically they just don't have the same you know, safety requirements here. So because there's no regulation, you know, these companies that have stopped using these colors and additives in their products in other countries continue to add them, you know, in the U.S. And you know, this is like a sick experiment that the researchers suggested to determine which artificial food colors might be damaging, you know, a child's brain. They suggested that parents buy a bottle of food dye and basically have them do some kind of mental task like math homework, right? And then check them, you know, have them eat a little bit of this food coloring and then check how they're doing in half an hour. And if they're still doing as well, then double that concentration and check again in half an hour. You know, I have a better idea. Why don't I just avoid that stuff in the first place, right? Let's see. So these artificial dyes and colors, they're synthesized from petroleum. Right? It's a industrial type of toxin, and so they have a lot of these byproducts that I talked about earlier. You know, mercury, lead, and arsenic. And you know, they include things like artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, preservatives, and there is a type of diet. It's actually of particular interest for parents of children with ADHD. That I just gave like a you know, hyperlink here. You know, if you're interested in that, you can find out more information. But it's meant to actually help through the diet to control, you know, to limit intake of these various preservatives and artificial ingredients that can impair concentration and impair attention. And as well, you know, what I do when I'm working, you know, with the child to improve their focus and concentration and ability to learn, basically to make them smarter. You can also use therapeutic foods, you know, like the green tea I mentioned before, which actually helps you to be a little bit more focused. It improves your attention and focus and concentration, and so that's, you know, you can also use these therapeutic foods, and I've listed somewhere in here. Okay, so any questions about that before we move on? Okay, so there's also a great way to greatly improve ADHD through something you do every day, right? So in that, it's kind of, you can tell based on the title of the slide, right? It's exercise. In the US alone, there's 20 million prescriptions written for stimulants like Ritalin for children with ADHD. Have you guys ever heard of ADHD by chance? What's that? Do you guys know what it is? Does anyone want to?
Yeah, she said
Yeah.
short attention.
Short attention. Okay, yeah, you're on the right track. So it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. All right, so it's basically, like you said, you know, you can't focus on things that are important to you. You know, so it's especially like in school, you know, you might have trouble, and grades might suffer. So you know, a lot of doctors, when they see kids, you know, parents bring them in that can't do well in school, they have trouble focusing. You know, they just write a drug. They give them a drug like Ritalin. So there's more prescriptions for this than any other drug in its class, over 800,000, and then 20 million added every year. That's a lot of you know, drugs for a lot of kids. So the way they work, they're thought to raise chemicals in the brain that are involved in learning and memory. So there's another way we can increase the same chemicals in the brain, natural neurotransmitters are called, that we use to learn. And how can we do that? Any guys should know the answer. Exercise. Right. So good job. You've been paying attention. What's your name?
Brett.
Brett. Okay, good job, Brett. So,
Brian.
Brian?
Brian.
Okay, Brian, good job. So, exercise actually increases the levels of these neurotransmitters very quickly, within minutes. The stimulants actually can take hours to work, and they have a lot of deleterious health effects. So they have a lot of side effects you really don't want to deal with. But exercise works quicker and is safer, and oftentimes it's a much better choice. Both acute and chronic. So in other words, exercising will have an immediate effect and also a long-lasting effect, and they can alleviate ADHD symptoms like inability to focus. So, like I mentioned, the drugs produce a lot of unwanted side effects, and exercise does have side effects as well. Does anyone know what those side effects are? What are the side effects of exercise, guys? I want to see some hands up.
I think liver bed.
Exactly, right? So the side effects for exercise are all good, whereas for... How come only Brian is answering the questions here? You guys gotta pull your weight. All right, so so unlike the drugs, exercise only has good side effects, right? So so the authors in the study agree that basically the drugs only have a limited impact on these ADHD symptoms, whereas something like exercise has a wide-ranging and overall general health benefit. So it increases many areas of human health all at the same time. And just a little note that Michael Phelps was diagnosed with ADHD. You guys know who Michael Phelps is?
Yeah.
No? Never heard of him? He won the He's won I lost count how many gold medals in swimming. So he's a famous Olympic swimmer, and he was diagnosed with ADHD in the 6th grade. But by staying focused on his training, he was able to do very well. So, just a little note. Okay, any questions? We're going to move on. So, fruits and veggies. How many of you like fruits and veggies? One person, 2 people, 3, 4, 5. All right, not bad. I hope that by the time I'm done with this, there's going to be more hands up, okay? Because the benefits, if you consider everything you're gaining, it's gonna, outweigh any kind of bias based on bad taste. So, unfortunately, the prevalence of asthma is growing around the world. Do you guys know what asthma is? Yeah. What is asthma? What's that? Breathing problems. Good. Yeah. What is it?
I have it.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are the symptoms? What do you feel when you get an asthma attack? What happens?
You feel like you can't breathe.
Yeah, it's hard to breathe, right?
Yeah.
You get coughing, chest tightness, right? Phlegm, yeah, shortness of breath. Okay, so it's not a very pleasant experience. It's the most common chronic disease in children. And there was a study done in children with asthma and allergies. And there was a very large study, more than 1 million kids were studied. So basically they found that reduced consumption of fruits and vegetables and greens and other dietary sources of these vitamins were linked with increased asthma. So eggs and soda were also associated with increased asthma. And in only 8 weeks, the researchers found that removing eggs and dairy from the diet actually improved kids' lung function. And so high vegetable intake was found protective in children. It cut the odds of asthma in half. And increased consumption of plants, again, was associated with reduced symptoms, as well as increased consumption of fruits. And so allergies also decreased with higher fruit and vegetable intake. And so part of the reason that the scientists think these fruits and vegetables have such a protective effect is because they also act on the intestinal microflora. So this is probably you guys have no idea what this is. Who knows what the intestinal flora is? Or gut flora? Have you guys ever heard of that?
It's in my toothpaste.
It's in your toothpaste?
think that you're thinking floor, right? Oh.
So basically, inside your gut, in your tummy, right, there's a huge amount of bacteria, okay? And a lot of these bacteria are actually very important for health. They contribute nutrients and all kinds of beneficial, substances that we use. So there's actually, if you count the number of cells in your body and you count the number of bacteria in your intestine, probably the bacteria will be greater in number. Okay? So you're more bacteria than you are human. Okay? Don't take that as a bad way, but that's a whole other question. But basically, the point is that these bacteria are really essential, to health, and fruits and vegetables are covered with it. Okay, so they affect the immune system, and eating these like fruits and vegetables basically provides you with these beneficial microorganisms that then support your immune system. One of them is called lactobacilli. They're found in a number of products called probiotics that are intended to support the immune system and gut health in general. And the study showed that kids primarily raised on vegetarian diets had lower prevalence of allergies, and also that these probiotics, these beneficial microorganisms that are found in the fruits and vegetables, play a key role in their immune system health and help to reduce asthma. So, the best approach, again, is a combination of eating less animal foods and more whole plant-based foods, less processed foods, of course, in general as well. So these, microorganisms, like I said, they have an effect on the immune system. They improve how it works, right? So basically, you're going to be sick less of the time. Okay? You're going to catch colds less often if you eat this way. And because you guys hate missing class, right? I mean, I'm so Mrs. Duarte's class is your favorite, right? So you wouldn't want to. So anyway, but it is really important because in the end, your immune system plays a huge role in your overall health as well, including in preventing you from getting cancer and other diseases. So, the evidence shows that these beneficial microorganisms that cover fruits and vegetables are, very important to our overall health. And the thing that makes, the food special, foods like fruits and vegetables, is that they contain ingredients that actually feed these good bacteria in your gut. So it helps to preserve them. They're called prebiotics, but versus if you just get something at the store like a probiotic. Have you guys ever heard of a probiotic? So probably that's too health oriented. All right. It's not going to be the same because they don't last very long in the intestine, right? And they get washed out, basically. They go through. Whereas the fruits and vegetables have a long-lasting impact. And then also, I want to mention that fermented, so things like yogurt, kefir, they're said to have probiotics, but they don't have any health benefit because it's not sufficient concentration, unfortunately, of these beneficial organisms. Okay, so we can skip over the probiotic stuff. I don't think you guys are too concerned about that, but okay, so. Does this look familiar?
Wait, is that from?
Wait, where's Kaylin?
Is it a show?
No, it's what happens sometimes when.
Constipation.
Yeah, constipation. What is constipation?
Oh,
Can't
Kayla
take it down.
looked at it.
Exactly. Okay, so
Yeah, you can't run it down.
yeah, it's a common problem, for
You eat
children.
too much veggies. You get stuff going.
No, actually it's the
you don't
opposite.
eat less. You don't eat enough. My bad.
It's okay. Actually, a common treatment is actually to eat more fruits and vegetables that have fiber, right? That can help with constipation. Yeah. So the usual treatment, though, in the conventional, like if you go to see a typical doctor, is they prescribe you laxatives, and fiber supplements. And this doesn't work very well, and if it doesn't, then more potent and higher doses of drugs are used, to actually help you go. But it still might not work, and years go by, and it can even extend into adulthood. But there was the researchers found that actually consumption of dairy products is associated with chronic constipation in children. So, before, like in the 1950s, if you went to see a doctor and you complained of, constipation, then a lot of times they thought you were crazy. What are you talking about? Like it's all in your head, right? But actually, it was known back then. There was a link between eating dairy, like cheese and milk, right, and other things like that. That it's actually can make you constipated. So, the study looked at removing cow milk from the diet, and in children with this kind of constipation, where the doctors couldn't figure out what was causing it. And they found that just within 3 days, most of the children were cured of their constipation just by removing milk, cheese, other dairy products. So yeah, in this, when they made the children or switched them over to the diet that was free of dairy, their constipation completely resolved, and it was very clearly proven. So when they put them back on the dairy, when they gave them milk or cheese, again they became more constipated. They took it away, and they were cured. So it's this kind of study establishes a very compelling evidence that dairy products basically can cause constipation. So just more details about the study. And this was followed up by more evidence in higher, larger, higher quality studies. It confirmed basically the same thing, that in this case they looked at children even with very severe constipation that had actual tears in their anus. So that's how bad it was. Okay. So it might sound funny, but it's actually very painful. So that's how important this is. And so these kids are really sick. They're really suffering. When
The question.
oh yeah, question here.
Only to the anus or the testicles? Or both?
No, your testicles aren't part of your digestive tract, so you're good there. But I'll tell you though, the dairy does affect that part as well in a negative way. So just to be safe, don't do it. Don't do the dairy. Yeah. So they gave them either cow's milk or soy milk for 2 weeks, and then they switched it around. So the group that was receiving the cow milk then received the soy milk. And so what they found was that in most of the children, again, they were actually cured, and all these tears were healed. So that's how significant it was. And none of the children receiving the cow's milk had any improvement, while the children that were on the soy milk got better very quickly. And the pain went away as well. And not just cow milk, by the way, but all dairy products. This includes like milk, cheese, anything that comes from a cow, right, or a sheep or a goat, etc. And so larger studies confirm this. When you remove all the dairy, you get a 100% cure rate from constipation. And so it's not just constipation, by the way. It's also a lot of other diseases. Like you mentioned, concern about passing on your genes. So, but that's just one area. There's cancer and like autism. There's all kinds of diseases that are associated and can be caused by dairy.
Autism is a disease?
Yes. It's a disorder where the children have problems communicating with other children, getting along, fitting in socially. So it's it's kind of like a brain disorder.